They were so pious and sanctimonious about the Tories when they were in opposition, and they had plenty to have a go at on the Tories. No question about that. But it's now come back to bite them. The Sue Gray thing, I think, is a bit more worrying because it suggests that Keir Starmer doesn't have control of Downing Street in the way he should. And of course, that brought Boris Johnson down. He didn't have control of Downing Street. It was chaotic. And when a prime minister has to say, look, I'm in control, when he has to say that less than 3 months in power, you know it's a real mess. You know it's in real trouble. When he had normally prime ministers say, I'm in control in their dying days. That's when they're not in their first 3 months.
Andrew Neil didn't merely interview Keir Starmer, he dismantled him, firing off question after punishing question as Starmer stumbled through half-finished answers. A visible flash of panic creeping into his expression. By the end, it felt less like a tough interview and more like a public unravelling, reducing him to a watery political residue, while Neil appeared almost unsatisfied, pressing on regardless, turning the entire exchange into something brutally incisive and so uncomfortable it was hard to watch without physically cringing.
That's not process, that's
well,
the
you're
rules.
following the process, but there's a bigger principle at stake, that Labour Party members who are being asked to vote for you should know who's bankrolling your campaign.
That is why the Labour Party set up those rules.
But you won't tell us.
The Labour Party rules say, carry out the checks, which we have to carry out, and I've got a compliance team doing that. Once you're satisfied the checks are carried out and the donations are proper in order, they go to the parliamentary authorities who put them on the parliamentary website so that everybody can see them. I've been following that procedure. That is exactly the parliamentary rules.
But the other candidates in this contest have published who is bankrolling their campaign. You seem to be hiding behind this process. Why won't you simply tell us tonight who are your 5 biggest donors?
Andrew, how can you say I'm hiding behind a process when it's the Labour Party process? The Labour Party, beginning of
Keir Starmer stuttered and stalled like a radio, endlessly searching for a signal, flat and drained like yesterday's tea, while Andrew Neil sliced straight through the rehearsed soundbites as if they were paper thin. It never felt like a debate at all, more a methodical takedown that left Starmer appearing hopelessly out of place, as though he'd accidentally stepped into a gladiatorial contest he was never equipped to fight.
Why don't you do what the other candidates do and tell... Don't Labour members have a right, as they decide whether to vote for you or not, they want to know where your money's coming from?
I've been asked that many times. I've said it's coming from trade unions, from crowdfunding, from individual donations.
Who's your biggest donor?
It's coming from those 3. One of my biggest donors was put up on the website, I think, yesterday.
Right, that's one of the lawyer.
Yeah.
That's the law. But who are your 5 biggest donors?
Well,
you haven't announced. You've only announced about £125,000 worth of donations. This campaign costs a lot more than that. Doesn't transparency just demand? I mean, it's causing...
Keir Starmer moves as if he's stuck in permanent loading mode. Every word rigidly scripted, every sentence hovering on the brink of an internal alarm, making any discussion of policy feel like sitting through an endless, soul-draining meeting. Then Andrew Neil steps in, calm, exact and surgically sharp, patiently stripping back Starmer's replies and laying bare each weakness. By the end, Starmer appeared less like a serious contender and more like someone who had walked into the wrong room at precisely the worst possible moment.
There are a lot of fundamental issues which need to be tackled in our country. A lot of them are allowed just to atrophy under the Conservatives. They ran out of any reforming zeal. But given the scale of problems that we face, from health to infrastructure and so on, he just doesn't have the blueprint that is going to put that right. I think he can do some things that will improve matters, but this will not be a transformative government. He doesn't have it in him to be transformative. The cabinet isn't good enough to be transformative either. So I think it's the best you can hope for is that things get a bit better. And, even that would be...
The most amusing part was how quickly Starmer's courtroom honed composure collapsed. That carefully worn look of control slid away, replaced by the face of a man who'd abruptly realised he'd missed an urgent appointment elsewhere, and the broken phrases and uneasy movements gave the game up. Entirely, this wasn't confidence or command, it was sheer panic wrapped in a tailored suit.
Pretty much consign everything Labour had to say about tax during the election campaign to the dustbin of history. Consider how the narrative has changed. Before the election, we were assured that all Labour spending plans were fully costed and that there was no need for taxes to rise, bar a few small and specific increases like VAT on school fees. Within weeks of being elected, Chancellor Rachel Reeves claimed to have discovered a £22 billion fiscal black hole left behind by the dastardly Tory. PR and the IFS had already warned that Labour would inherit an eye-wateringly tight fiscal position, but that didn't stop Reeves affecting to be surprised.
Starmer's economic pitch slid almost instantly from concrete policy into the territory of a corporate motivational poster, full of lofty talk about growth and fairness, delivered as if words alone could conjure results. But the moment Neil pushed for specifics, the whole thing fell apart, revealing nothing but hazy assurances and unanswered questions. More bedtime story than workable plan. Polished and confident enough to sound persuasive on the surface, yet completely hollow the second anyone asked to see the workings behind it.
I don't think sort of thrashing around and blaming X, Y, and Z.
But if you have nothing bad to say about, and I would suggest to you, you cannot plan the future without understanding the past. And if you have nothing bad to say about Mr. Corbyn's leadership now, why did you take part in the attempt to topple him as leader in 2016?
Well, in the immediate aftermath of the referendum, I thought we needed a change, and I set out my reasons for it. We then had a leadership election. Jeremy won it convincingly. I accepted the members had put him in as leader, and I then served him for the next 3.5 years.
You said it was simply untenable to suggest that we can offer an effective opposition without a change of leader. Untenable.
But we then went through a process.
Andrew Neil didn't merely put questions to Starmer. He hit him with blunt, unforgiving facts, peeling away the gloss from every carefully prepared line. Each optimistic assertion was countered with paperwork, quotations, and numbers, leaving Starmer retreating into misty buzzwords and recycled slogans, like someone attempting to build a complicated machine with no manual at all. By the end, the contrast was unmistakable. Neil arrived with precision, while Starmer responded with fog.
Reeves says the budget was a one-off, that others won't be like this one. But if the OBR's anemic growth forecasts are still too optimistic, she will be back for more tax and more borrowing. But it was a watershed budget. It propels the UK tax burden and public spending as a share of GDP towards European social democratic levels. That was no accident. It was the chosen direction of travel of the Starmer-Reeves project. Just why, unless driven by ideology, they want to join a collection of economies synonymous with slow growth and stagnation is a puzzle. But that is where they've chosen to head. And the OBR, in terms of what it means for economic growth and living standards for the rest of this decade, has already spelled out the consequence.
The more Neil tightened the screws, the quicker Starmer dissolved into a blur of cautious, pre-approved phrasing, impossible to pin down, like trying to clutch at fog. He sounded less like a prospective leader and more like a malfunctioning corporate chatbot, looping endlessly through decaffeinated sentences that said everything and nothing at once, simultaneously endorsing and hedging positions inside a kind of political Schrödinger's box. Neil sliced straight through the haze, and the pattern became obvious. The moment genuine clarity was demanded, Starmer simply disappeared into the mist.
Seeing some reports over the weekend that the government was briefing that this could add 2% to our GDP. Well, in their dreams, it's never going to do that. It's marginal at best. And the argument is not this deal on its own. Is it, where does it lead? Is that the end of it? Is this the end of the reset? Or is this the start of the reset? If it's the end of the reset, then it's marginal. There are some improvements in some areas where the government's made concessions that it shouldn't have done. But in the grand scheme of things, it's quite...
Starmer's supposed vision for Britain evaporated almost immediately into a dense fog. And when Neil asked what life under a Labour government would actually feel like, the answer came back stuffed with sweeping promises and conspicuously absent details, like a presenter suddenly realising half the slides never loaded. What followed were reheated slogans about unity and progress, flat and corporate in tone, offering no daring ideas, no texture, no sense of conviction. just risk-free cliques dressed up as leadership. By the end, the reality was obvious. This wasn't a vision at all, merely a placeholder, and there was no sign of the fog lifting anytime soon.
I think and that's a tough one to answer, I think. I think for Mr. Starmer it is, well, you say that, but you've said the following things over the past 5 years, none of which you now stand for. I interviewed him for the Labour leadership on the BBC. I think it was towards the end of February 2020, just before the pandemic started to hit. And he went through a whole range of things: nationalised rail, mail, energy, and so on, abolish universal credit, abolish university tuition fees, wealth tax, and all the rest of it. And I said, but how can we? He said, Andrew, these are not promises, these are pledges. Now, I didn't, just being a simple lad, didn't understand the difference between promise and pledge. I thought they're the same thing, but it doesn't matter what it means because he's broken them all. So I think that's a problem.
As Starmer drifted through tangled talking points, Andrew Neil's expression did the heavy lifting, part disbelief, part second-hand embarrassment. Starmer kept looping back to the same lines like a sat-nav permanently stuck on recalculating, while Neil steadily peeled back the fade, revealing Labour's internal disorder, with infighting and power plays flickering into view like a reality show mid-meltdown. Starmer's attempts to project authority landed about as effectively as a cat trying to herd overexcited puppies. Earnest, chaotic, and unintentionally funny. By the end, the contrast was brutal. Neil arrived armed with facts, Starmer arrived banking on obscurity, and the internet wasted no time piling on with memes of no-signal Wi-Fi, endlessly buffering videos, and the viral hashtag Starmer buffering, sealing the moment as accidental comedy born from robotic delivery colliding with relentless questioning.
Right, that we still don't know the details, though the one detail we've got, I think, is a problem for the government, which is it's basically rolling over the existing EU access to British fisheries waters for another 12 years. And I saw earlier you were a bit surprised by that because it's way above the upper end of what Britain was expected to concede. Some talked of 5, it maybe got up to 10, nobody was talking about 12. So I think the European Union will regard that as a major victory. That's a notch on their ladder.
Andrew Neil didn't simply test Starmer, he turned the interview into a warning label, presenting a leader who looks sleek on the surface, but stalls the moment pressure is applied, like a laptop frozen on a loading screen. What emerged was a politician who struggles to articulate policy, sidesteps direct challenges, and locks up when confronted with scrutiny. Polished soundbites offered no rescue. What was missing was weight, momentum, and clear conviction. Until those arrive, the exchange stands as a sharp lesson in image colliding with reality, less epic fantasy, more painfully long pauses, and absolutely no heroic comeback. Keir Starmer stuttered and stalled like a radio endlessly searching for a signal, flat and drained like yesterday's tea, while Andrew Neil sliced through rehearsed soundbites as if they were paper thin. It wasn't a debate so much as a methodical takedown, leaving Starmer hopelessly out of place as, if he'd stumbled into a gladiatorial contest, he was never equipped to fight. As Starmer drifted through tangled talking points, Neil's expression carried the weight, part disbelief, part second-hand embarrassment, while Starmer looped back to the same lines like a sat-nav, permanently stuck on recalculating, allowing the fade to peel away and Labour's internal disorder. Infighting and power plays to flicker into view like a reality show mid-meltdown. His attempts to project authority landed as effectively as a cat trying to herd overexcited puppies. Earnest, chaotic, and unintentionally funny. By the end, the contrast was brutal. Neil came armed with facts, Starmer came banking on obscurity, and the internet wasted no time, flooding social media with memes of no-signal Wi-Fi, endlessly buffering videos, and the viral hashtag Starmer buffering, sealing the moment as accidental comedy born. From robotic delivery colliding with relentless questioning,